Deven Choksey, Managing Director of DRChoksey Investment, with us, who is Vinit Bolinjkar, Head Research of Ventura Securities. Welcome to both of you. Just trying to understand, and yes, one part of it is we'll see the stock perspective, we'll see maybe some reaction, etc. But Deven bhai, I want to start with you and just taking on from what Mahesh Jethmalani said in that comment, that this was, in a sense, not just about one group of companies and one case, because SEBI looks at thousands of cases a year. It was also an attack on the integrity and credibility of Indian equities, wasn't it? Which has now been foiled.
Yes, Deven, good morning. I think what one needs to basically examine, the unregulated entity making such kind of move, an attack, I think, to destabilize the financial market and the integrity of the financial market. Such entities, I think, should be under control of the regulators. Unfortunately, Indian regulators do not have the corresponding ability to go to the SEC and possibly, I think, get such kind of entities under their control. To that extent, I think our regulations need to be evolved and needs to be, I think, probably corrected from whatever the lacuna or the gaps that we are seeing. I believe that I think this particular episode has opened up many areas, I think, for the regulations to look into. And I believe that I think Indian regulators being proactive, they would possibly now start looking into some of the weak areas or the gap areas, which is prohibiting them to regulate those entities which are destabilizing market who are not under the purview. So that's my understanding. However, I think for the investor, I think the business matters. And I think they need to study the numbers well. The way the market reacted after Hindenburg report, I think it told me that most of the people were only, listening to hearsay. They were not looking at the data and numbers. The numbers at that point of time were quite strong. As an analyst, as a fund manager, I think those numbers were quite convincing about the business and the business model, even though whatever the allegations which were given to the company. So in my viewpoint, I think both the aspects, the investor aspect as well as I think the regulatory aspects, requires to remain a little bit more alert and maybe I think more mature as I would like to be.
Important points that you're raising, Deven. I'll come to you, Vinit, in terms of the stocks, right? And ultimately, since that point, since the allegations were leveled, quite a lot of water under the bridge and quite a lot of effort that has been made by the group to reduce the debt on the books, to improve various metrics. And that has been done. It's for everybody to see. So would you say that with this last and final call on this saga, that the view on the group will change in terms of making it more attractive for investors to go out and say, okay, now we focus on the fundamentals?
Yeah, so, after the Hindenburg, the corrective action that the group took on reducing its leverage, becoming more, transparent with providing additional information to investors, etc. Already the investor confidence was on an uptick. And the SEBI judgment only, endorses what has happened and puts a double seal on the fact that, nothing untoward happened. There was no wrongdoing. And we expect that this will get reflected in the sentiment of investors as they make a beeline for these counters in the coming days. See, because of these allegations and the suspension that was there for the last 2.5 years, a lot of foreign investors couldn't invest in this stock because of the corporate governance issues. But now when it gets a double seal, one is the actions that the company has taken and what SEBI has endorsed. I think it provides a very strong case of corporate governance being established and getting a clean chit. And I think that is to a large extent going to lead to a massive re-rating of the stock as we go ahead into the next few months.
And by the way, a clutch of brokerage conversations and calls that are coming up as well. Today, for example, Adani Power has a Morgan Stanley tactical buy and an initiating coverage as well. So a lot of individual triggers. I mean, Jeffries yesterday was on Adani Green or today is on Adani Green. So a lot of individual triggers as well for these businesses, plus the airport opening up. Deven bhai, the question is this serving as a bit of a template as well for any future things that happen? Because we know that as the country and the economy grows larger and more powerful, there will be many such things. Does this serve as an unfortunate template, if you will, because investors lost money, which is not desirable, but does this serve as a template?
Good morning, Neeraj. Well, I believe that I think overall the growth model of the business I think would probably be the most important part to look at. Adani Enterprise being an incubator, I think is giving the birth to various businesses and they are making those businesses at a global scale. Obviously, I think when they are creating such kind of enterprises, I think businesses, the global players who want to buy those businesses, I think they would look out for opportunities to buy out those businesses at a cheaper price. For example, I think the group has built the infrastructure over the last 20, 25 years. Now, average I think cost of rupee at that point of time, if one has to put it across, maybe somewhere around 55 to a dollar. Today it is 88, 89 to a dollar. And if anybody wants to enter India infrastructure story with a 90,000 crore plus kind of a EBITDA making business across the group, I think they may probably want to buy cheap. And that is where probably I think these kind of tricks are being played. As I said that I think these tricks are being played, I think that should be at the back of your mind at the end of the day, I think as an investor. And that's where probably I think one needs to remain alert. Those who manipulate the market, I leave it to regulator to regulate them. But those who invest in the market, I want them to remain alert and probably I think buy with the fundamental at the back, I think while taking the investment decisions.
Okay, I have a question for Vinit because Vinit mentioned that this leads to re-rating of the stock. Now, Vinit, the question is, pre-Jan 2024, the fortunes of the Adani Group stocks were a factor, as is the case with every other business, a factor of multiples and earnings growth. We know that the earnings growth is looking steady. Do you reckon the multiples move up now? And out of the 10 odd companies listed out there, right? Do you have a preference for some based on your coverage or the way the valuations are right now for any of them?
So, we have examined these companies in depth. We do it virtually every quarter with earnings calls. And what we find is that most of the businesses are quoting at significant discount to their fair value on a FY28 basis. Two things that are going to happen as we go out into the future is that, the credit rating of the company is going to become strong. Its access to deep capital markets, long-term funding in the US is going to increase. And that is going to have a salutary effect on the cost of capital for the company. Now, for businesses which earn cash flows for over 25 to 50 years, which all of their businesses do, I think that's going to have a very strong impact on growth because as the cost of capital comes down, the embedded value goes up. And I think that Adani Green, with a very strong pipeline of capex over the next 4-5 years, as they mandated to do 50 gigawatts by FY30, and the incubator Adani Enterprises would see some of the best growth stories going ahead. So, if you look at Adani Enterprises, they have got several businesses that they're incubating. You talk of copper, you talk of data centers, defense, infrastructure, and also the new energy of, water to molecule, hydrogen vertical. All futuristic businesses and their airport businesses on monetization levels. So, all these two counters are going to do really well. And if you look at Adani Total Gas, I think it is one of the most, value stock among the Adani group of companies that one could look to buy.
Okay, and so therefore you've given us a few to look at this morning. Vinit, Deven bhai, thank you so much as always for taking the time. Always a pleasure speaking with you and important to get your voices today.